This story is titled, I Was the Family Outcast. Until I inherited everything and watched them beg for 28 years, I was the invisible one, the family's black goat, the guy they barely noticed at every Christmas Eve gathering. Meanwhile, my cousins got showered with praise for the most ordinary accomplishments. I could have cured cancer, and they still would have looked at me sideways, asking when I was finally going to get a real job. Even my wife, Veronica, would step right around me to hug someone standing behind me. Uncle Randall loved introducing his kids to strangers at parties, but somehow always seemed to forget I existed. This is my niece, Theo, a doctor, and his wife Ava, the host, he'd say proudly, his chest puffed out like a peacock. His eyes would glide right past me like I was part of the furniture, even as I stood there awkwardly, holding a bottle of wine I'd brought as a gift for the host. I made sure it was always an expensive bottle too, because somewhere along the way I learned that a cheap gift just gave them another excuse to dismiss me. My biggest crime? Dropping out of law school in my second year to launch a tech company. To them, that made me a reckless gambler who threw away a respectable career to mess around on a computer. Never mind that my company, Cloud Sync Solutions, had grown fast and was bringing in 7 figures annually. It didn't matter. I wasn't a doctor, a professor, or a banker, so in their carefully curated social hierarchy, I didn't count. When people asked why I wasn't at family events, my mom would just wave it off. Quinn's going through a phase, she'd say. He'll come to his senses and finish law school eventually. That was 7 years after I'd signed my first client contract worth $1 million. I stopped trying with him after my master's degree ceremony. I'd worked full-time while getting my master's in computer science, kept a perfect 4.0 GPA, and pulled 60-hour weeks to juggle school and growing a business. When I shared the news in our family group chat, attached to a picture of me in my cap and gown, the response was, dead silence. 3 days of radio silence. Meanwhile, when my cousin Finn got promoted to assistant manager at a coffee shop making $12 an hour, it sparked 47 congratulatory messages, 3 separate dinner parties, and a group gift, a gold watch to celebrate his success. The irony didn't escape me. By that point, I was employing 15 people. Yet every Christmas Eve, I still got seated at the kids' table, even though I was 28 and older than half the adults in the room. My spot was usually between a second cousin in a high chair and a nephew playing with action figures. At family weddings, I wasn't even in the pictures. They'd ask me to step aside. Quinn, could you take this photo for us? Handing me their phones like I was some random photographer they hired off Craigslist. At dinner, they'd talk around me, dissecting my life as if I weren't sitting right there sipping a beer and wondering why I drove 3 hours for this insult. What's Quinn up to these days? Aunt Veronica would ask my mom, even though I was sitting 3 feet away at the same table. Oh, still fiddling with that computer stuff, my mom would say with a dismissive wave of her hand. Playing around with websites or whatever. What she didn't mention was that playing with websites had just landed me a Fortune 500 contract. But why let facts ruin a good narrative? The worst part? I kept showing up anyway. Some part of me, the part that still hoped things could change, kept thinking maybe this year would be different. Maybe this time they'd ask about my life with real interest. Maybe they'd finally see me as one of their own. But they never did. And then Grandma Iris passed away. I was the only one who visited her every Sunday at Sunset Manor, a care home that reeked of disinfectant and broken dreams. Every Tuesday at 6 p.m., I'd walk through those automatic doors carrying a little cooler packed with her favorite pink frosted cookies, something she'd taught me to bake when I was 12 and spent a summer at her house. The staff knew me by name. Quinn's here for Mrs. Patterson, they'd announce over the intercom, their voices warm with genuine affection. The nurses would give me updates on her health, ask about my business, and remember details about my life my own family had long forgotten. The rest of the family treated her like an obligation. Aunt Veronica came twice in 5 years, both times to ask about her will. Uncle Randall sent flowers on her birthday, but couldn't remember which grandkid belonged to which parent during their rare phone calls. Tell me again about your company, Grandma Iris would say during our chess games, her hands steady even as her eyesight faded. She listened intently as I explained customer acquisition strategies, server infrastructure, and plans to expand into mobile apps. You remind me of myself at your age, she told me once with a mischievous glint in her eyes. Too stubborn to give up. Too smart to fail. When I signed my biggest deal ever, a 3-year contract worth $2 per million, she was the only one who understood what it meant. That's kingdom-building money, she said, squeezing my hand with surprising strength. Don't let anyone convince you it's not. When she died, I was the one holding her hand. The rest of the family didn't even bother showing up. They were too busy attending cousin Theo's engagement party, a party held in my own city. I wasn't invited, of course. I found out about her death from a text message. Mom passed this afternoon. Funeral details to come. No phone call. No personal words. Just a text, like announcing dinner plans. When the lawyer called to ask about the will, I almost didn't go. Why bother? I figured it'd just be another family event where I'd be expected to sit quietly in the back while the real adults handled the important stuff. But something in the lawyer's tone made me pause. Mr. Patterson specifically requested your presence, he said. He was very clear. You need to be there. So I went. How's your business these days? I've been meaning to ask about your company for months now. That was the first time Uncle Randall had asked me about my work in 15 years. The first time he even said my name without making it sound like it left a bad taste in his mouth. We were just saying, Randall continued, leading me to the head of the dining table. You should sit here tonight. It was a chair they'd never once offered me, not even when I'd been the only family member to show up for someone's birthday. The head of the table had always been sacred, reserved for the important ones. For 28 years, I'd eaten at the kids' table, the wobbly kitchen table, or on a folding chair dragged out of the garage. But now, here I was, being ushered into the patriarch's seat like some king returning from exile. We're so proud of you, Randall said with over-the-top enthusiasm as he pulled out the chair for me. Even Theo, my cousin who used to act like I barely existed, was grinning like I was a war hero come home. I just want everyone to know how brilliant you've been all along, he gushed. Remember when we were kids and you built that computer from scratch? I always knew you'd be successful. I looked him dead in the eye. You mean the time you called me a loser and then smashed it on purpose? His smile flickered for half a second before snapping back into place. Kids, huh? We just didn't recognize genius when we saw it back then. It was incredible, this sudden wave of family revisionism. All at once, every single one of them had fond memories of supporting my dreams. Every insult I'd endured over the years had been magically rewritten as tough love. Every snide remark turned into a misunderstanding. I always told people you were the smartest one in the family. Aunt Veronica chimed in. The same woman who, just last year, introduced me at a party as Randall's weird nephew who plays with computers. And we knew all along that your computer thing would pay off, my mother added. The same mother who spent years telling people I was just going through a phase. For over an hour, they kept going, performing a complete rewrite of 28 years of family history. They spoke with straight faces, their voices warm and serious, but I could see the calculations flickering behind their eyes. Every word was weighed, every compliment carefully measured for maximum impact. This wasn't remorse. It was strategy. The thing is, Veronica said softly, setting down her wine glass and leaning forward like she was about to deliver some heartfelt wisdom. We're just concerned about you managing such a huge legacy all by yourself. It's such an enormous responsibility. Exactly, Randall's wife added. Life-changing money like that needs smart management. Theo piped up too. The family should really stay united, especially during a big transition like this. Ava, who'd been quiet until now, pulled out a folder she'd clearly prepared ahead of time. Maybe we could form a family management team, she suggested, spreading documents across the table. You know, to handle the inheritance for everyone's benefit. To share the responsibility and the burden. There it was. The real reason for this sudden family reunion. They'd spent the afternoon talking to financial planners and lawyers, scheming ways to carve up the money they'd assumed was already theirs. Grandma Iris would have wanted us to share, Veronica said, her voice catching with fake emotion. She always believed in family unity. Blood is thicker than water, Randall added gravely. I almost laughed. These were the same people who treated their own mother like a chore for years. And now here they were, preaching about family bonds because they wanted a slice of her empire. You're right, I said finally, nodding. Money shouldn't divide a family. Relief washed over their faces like a tide. To them, the victory was all but won. But here's the thing, I continued calmly. I've learned a lot about this family in the past week. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app, the one I'd been using for years to quietly record conversations. At first, I'd done it to figure out what I was doing wrong in social situations. But over time, I realized the recordings painted a much clearer picture. I wasn't the problem. Like this, I said, scrolling through the files. Did you know, Veronica, you once called me a basement dweller who would never amount to anything? Her face went pale. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. Or Randall, remember your theory that I might be autistic because I don't get social cues and can't take direction? I've got that one too. Randall's confident expression cracked, his jaw tightening as I spoke. And Ava, I locked eyes with her. You once explained to your sorority sisters why you cropped me out of family photos. You didn't want to be associated with the family embarrassment. You said I ruined your Instagram aesthetic. I could feel the air in the room thicken as I spoke. For years, I recorded these moments, thinking if I listened back, I'd find where I went wrong. But listening only confirmed one thing. I wasn't the failure here. You were. Quinn, please, Veronica started. I held up a hand. Not yet. Let me play you my favorite clip. I pressed play. My phone speaker filled the room with her voice from last Easter dinner. She's still messing with computers, Veronica said coolly in the recording. Theo's a doctor, Ava's a hostess, Finn's a manager. What does Quinn have to show for herself? A silly little website business that's bound to fail too. Veronica looked like she wished the floor would swallow her whole. Oh, and this part's even better, I said, tapping for the next clip. Randall's voice filled the room. That kid's delusional if he thinks computers are a real career. When he finally comes back to reality, maybe I'll give him a construction job. Some hard labor might teach him humility. The room went silent. For 6 years, I said quietly, I watched Grandma Iris sit by the window every Tuesday evening, hoping one of you would show up. She'd clip newspaper articles about your achievements, just to feel connected. She even asked me to pull up your Facebook pages because she missed you so much. And I lied for you. I told her you were all busy. I made excuses because I didn't want her to feel forgotten. But she wasn't stupid. She was 93, not blind. I pushed back the chair they'd been so eager to crown me with, the symbolic head of the table, the seat they thought would lure me into their trap, and stood up slowly. You didn't care about her then, I said. And you don't care about me now. This little act of yours? It's not about family. It's about money. Quinn, please, Veronica tried again. She knew her own children only managed to visit her twice in 5 years. She knew her grandchildren couldn't even remember her birthday. She knew the only time anyone ever called was to ask about her inheritance or talk her into renewing her will. I walked toward the door. All their eyes followed me like I was some kind of god about to leave them behind. You want to know what Grandma Iris really wanted? I said, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut glass. She wanted her family to visit her, to call her, to remember her birthday. She wanted you all to treat her grandson, me, with the kind of basic human kindness you seem to reserve for strangers. We made mistakes, Uncle Randall said, his voice breaking. But we can change. We're family. You're right, I said, stopping at the doorway. We are family. And I'll give you the same thing you've given me all these years. I looked around, meeting their eyes one by one. There was nothing there. No remorse. No real love. Just hunger. The result was quick and brutal. First came the phone calls, then the emails, then the texts. They tried everything to get their hands on Grandma's inheritance. They started with emotional appeals, tearful messages about family bonds and second chances. When that didn't work, they tried guilt, accusing me of disrespecting Grandma Iris's memory with my coldness. When manipulation failed, they turned to lawyers. They claimed Iris hadn't been mentally sound when she made her will. But their case fell apart in a week. The lawyers showed 6 years of video evidence. Grandma sharp as ever, her mind clear, her reasons for cutting them out documented in devastating detail. Recordings I'd made during our chess games, at first just to preserve memories, ended up sealing their fate. Quinn's the only one who ever treated me like a person, she'd said in one video. He earned this inheritance through 6 years of care and love. The others? They can earn like he did. When that strategy failed, they accused me of manipulating her. Said I'd unduly influenced her to turn against her own kids. That fell apart too. The nursing home staff testified on my behalf, describing my every Sunday visit and the family's glaring absence. For 6 years, the head nurse said under oath, Quinn never missed a visit. Mrs. Patterson would light up every Monday evening, asking if we thought he'd bring her favorite cookies again. As for the rest of the family, we might have seen them twice a year, usually around Christmas or when they needed her to sign something. 3 months after the will was read, all legal challenges expired. The inheritance was officially mine. And that's when the real fallout began. And Veronica lost her house. She'd been living far beyond her means for years, racking up debt and taking out loans she assumed would be covered by her slice of the inheritance. When the money didn't come through, her financial house of cards collapsed. Uncle Randall's restaurant went under. He'd expanded too aggressively, banking on Grandma's fortune to pay off his debts. Without that safety net, the business imploded. The health department found multiple violations during its final inspection, and the local paper ran the headline, "Family Restaurant Serves Last Meal." Cousin Theo's engagement fell apart. His fiancée turned out to be far more interested in his family's wealth than his pediatrician's salary. When she learned about the will, she gave back the ring and ran straight into the arms of a cardiologist whose family actually had money. My parents made one last desperate attempt to reconcile. 6 months later, they showed up at my office, eyes wet, voices trembling, rehearsed speeches about family healing on their lips. "We love you," my mother said, her tone hovering between sincerity and manipulation. "Money isn't what's important. We just want our son back." It was a beautiful performance. I didn't even look up from the financial report on my desk. Where was that love, I asked, when I graduated? When I started my business? When I needed emotional support during my divorce? My father straightened his jacket, adopting the tone of a man pitching a business deal. "We weren't perfect parents, Quinn, but we can start fresh. Family is forever." "You're right," I said, finally meeting his eyes. "You can start fresh, just like I did the day I stopped expecting anything from this family." I opened a drawer and pulled out a check I'd prepared weeks earlier because I knew this conversation was coming. "That's the total amount you spent on my birthdays in the last decade," I said, sliding the check across the table. It was for $500. Let's call it even. Their faces crumbled, shock, pain, and the dawning realization that the son they used to control had grown into a man they couldn't touch. A year later, I ran into Cousin Ava at a coffee shop downtown. She looked exhausted, wearing worn-out clothes and nursing a cheap coffee she probably couldn't afford. Gone were the designer handbags and perfect nails. "Quinn," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I know I don't have the right to ask, but can we talk?" "Sure," I said, studying her face for the manipulative glint I'd come to expect from my family. But this time, there was none. Just something I'd never seen from any of them before, genuine regret. "I've been thinking about what you said that night," she whispered. "About how we treated you. About how we treated Grandma. And you're right. About all of it." She started crying, not the performative kind from the lawyer's office, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that made other customers turn and stare. "I was angry at you for not sharing the inheritance," she said. "But really, I was angry at myself. We all were. We knew we were awful to you. And we kept doing it anyway, because it was easier than admitting we were jealous." "For the first time in my life," I said, "a family member is owning their mistakes." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said, her voice breaking. "And I don't want your money. I just wanted you to know, some of us finally understand what we lost." I bought her coffee, a small gesture, but it felt important. We sat in that corner for 2 hours as she told me about losing her law firm job, drowning in debt trying to maintain a lifestyle she couldn't afford, and the friends who'd abandoned her when her situation changed. "I've learned what you knew all along," she said. "The only things worth having are the ones you build yourself." 6 months later, Ava became the only family member I invited to my wedding. She didn't ask for anything except the chance to be a real cousin. She helped plan the reception and gave a speech about how proud she was of the man I'd become, away from the toxic family dynamic. The rest of them saw the wedding photos on social media. Randall left a comment about his financial troubles. I deleted it without a second thought. Theo sent me a long message about how he always supported me and wanted to rebuild our relationship. I read it once, then deleted it without replying. My parents never reached out again. That was probably for the best. 3 years later, I founded the Iris Patterson Foundation to fund technology education for underprivileged kids, the kind of clever, eager kids I'd once been, lacking family support but brimming with potential. The construction company Grandma built is thriving under professional management. I don't run it for the money. I run it because she built it from nothing, and I'll be damned if I let her life's work die with her. Her big house? It's now a community center offering job training and small business courses. There's a sign out front that reads, "The Iris Patterson Center, everyone welcome." Sometimes I wonder if I should have been more forgiving. Should I have given them a second chance? Tried to rebuild those family bonds? Then I remember sitting with Grandma, holding her hand as she asked why her own children had forgotten her. And I know I made the right choice. Some things can't be bought, and forgiveness is one of them. It has to be earned through action, not words. Through consistency, not comfort. Through presence, not presence. And after 28 years of being invisible, I finally understand. My presence is a gift. It's something to be earned, not demanded. The black sheep doesn't always stay with the flock. Sometimes he finds better pastures. Sometimes he starts his own herd.